commercial-free Catholic Charismatic channel.
He's strengthening the faith of so many people.
To promote the gift of church teaching, dedicated for the new evangelization.
God's blessings on your work. May God bless and prosper you.
Shalom World, God's own channel.
Glory to Jesus Christ. I'm Father Thomas Loya. We're back here in the classroom, which is the church, as we go back to school. Spelled SCHL, stands for Sacramental Catholic Human Liturgical Worldview. It's a way of seeing. That's what our faith is all about. Truth is all about seeing clearly and then living according to that clear, accurate, truthful vision. You know, truth is actually very simple, but it's not always easy. A lot of times we confuse those two words. Something that's simple, easy. Something can be simple, like truth is simple. By nature, it is simple. But it's not always easy to live by. It doesn't make the truth wrong. A very easy way to understand how the church discerns whether something is right or wrong, in other words, morality, is to understand one very simple principle. And for that, I'm going to invite you into what I call the H zone, meaning the honesty zone. It's all H words. If something is honest to what the reality is, in most cases and most moral issues, has to do with the language of the body. Because let's face it, all moral actions involve our body in some way. If we're being honest to the language of the body, we're being honest to the reality, this will bring about holiness. Holiness brings about happiness, and if we've got a whole lot of holiness and happiness, we will end up with the big H in heaven. Conversely, as your young people might say, if we are dishonest, we will end up with hurt. And if we end up with a lot of hurt, or we cause a lot of hurt, we could end up with the other big H. So we don't want to do that. But you notice it all comes down to one word. Honesty. That's why I call it the H zone. It's like your hip pocket little principle. You put that in your back hip pocket, pull it out whenever you want to know what's right or wrong. And especially when it comes to the church's teachings, or what we refer to as the church's teaching. As I mentioned in one of our earlier episodes, the church doesn't really have teachings, it teaches. God has the teachings. We simply point to what God has done. So in that sense, the church teaches. But the church doesn't make up stuff. A lot of people get mad at the church because they think we make up morality. All we do is point the way things are. We look at them honestly. We put on those sacramental liturgical glasses and we look at things honestly, and we simply say to the world, this is how God created it. This is how it works, and it works best if you follow that, if you're honest to that. We're going to take the H zone, and I'm going to combine that with what we've been talking about all along in this series, and that is our sacramental Catholic human liturgical worldview. We're going to combine those together to look at one of the most misunderstood, rejected, controversial issues in the church, and that is contraception. You know, contraception is really about a worldview. Just as we're talking about a sacramental worldview, contraception really comes from a worldview. It's part of what makes it wrong or contrary to the church, because the view that it comes from is very different than the sacramental worldview. It's a way of looking at everything. Think about it. We have basically a contraceptive society in so many ways. Contraception means to do something, but not to really do it. It's kind of like artificial. That's why it's called artificial contraception. For instance, think of all the artificial turf, artificial flavors, artificial colors. We live artificially oftentimes. We have so many things that are not real. Artificial foods, fish sticks instead of fish. All kinds of crazy fancy coffees instead of just plain coffee. We do polyester instead of real material. We can go on and on and on about how many things aren't real in our culture. How many things we do, but we don't really do them. We live in so many ways artificially. We rely so much, for instance, on pharmaceuticals. We're filling our bodies with chemicals and medicines, and that's what I would call artificial health. That's not really health. It's not health and well-being. It's kind of living artificially. We can go on and on with this. So contraception is a worldview. So out of a worldview comes certain behaviors, actions, beliefs. Just like out of the sacramental worldview, we look and behave out of that worldview with everything. Well, so too, if we have a contraceptive worldview, an artificial worldview, where we sort of do something but not really do it. It's not totally real. It has elements of it, but it's not totally real. If we do that, we're going to behave that way and take that view to a lot of things. Contraception is about a fundamental dishonesty. And for that, now we bring in the theology of the body, that sacramental worldview. In fact, the theology of the body was a system that St. John Paul II put together to basically deliver this mystical sacramental worldview. And in particular, he did it in regard to the church's teaching against contraception. Or maybe I should put it more in the positive. The church's teaching for life, for natural family planning, for life. Put it in the positive. But it's also a negative. It's against what goes against life, like contraception. And he put together this system of thinking, of articulating this view, largely in response to one little piece of a document, Humanae Vitae, that was written by Pope Paul VI. Came out in 1965. It was a document against contraception. Because Paul VI saw that the world was going down the path of contraception. He saw that would be very dangerous for humanity. As we'll see, he was right. John Paul II realized, and it's in the document too, that unless we had the total vision of man, we understood who human beings are, the why behind it, why behind why we're man and woman, and everything else, which we've been talking about in this whole series, the why behind it. Unless we had that, we won't really understand what the church is saying in terms of its position against contraception and for life and natural family planning. So he put together this system we now know as the theology of the body, where he taught us to retrieve that sacramental worldview that we've been doing in this classroom, going back to school. In the one flesh union between husband and wife, that one flesh union, that's a better word than sex. What happens? What actually happens? Let's be honest. Let's put on our sacramental glasses and see what actually happens. Through their very bodies, and in one flesh union between a husband and wife, the one flesh union means just that. Their bodies come together. But so do their whole persons. Remember, our bodies reveal the person. So their bodies come together in that action. And what are their bodies saying? Remember, we always talk about the language of the body. Every action speaks a language. Well, think about it. How do people come together in that marital embrace? They just join little pinkies together? They just hold hands? No, their whole bodies come together. There's a union going on there. If there's a union of their bodies, then their bodies are saying that. They're saying there's a union of persons going on here. That's what we call the unitive dimension of it. The unitive dimension of the marital embrace, the one flesh union. And it's also saying that since I'm doing this with my whole body, I'm giving my whole self to you. Now, my body is a package deal. It involves my whole self. If I'm giving myself to you, that means I'm not holding back. So I'm giving you my fertility, myself, my emotions, my love, my everything. And you're giving me all of yours. That's what makes it what we call a full, free, faithful, and potentially fruitful union. That's actually what's going on. That's what the bodies are saying. You can't deny it. That's actually what's happening. The other part of what's happening is that there's always a potential for new life. You can't pull the two apart without ending up with a dishonesty. What do we say about the H zone? Remember, we're in the H zone here, but with our sacramental glasses. Dishonesty always hurts. That's how you know something's wrong. Trace it back to where it's dishonest and where it's going to hurt. That's the whole point. God doesn't want us to hurt. The church doesn't want us to hurt. The church loves us. God loves us. The church isn't against us. That's why the church will see something and say, this isn't honest. It's going to hurt. We advise not doing it. We don't believe in it. People resist that because they don't see as the church sees. They see more contraceptively. So the one flesh union between husband and wife is saying something. It's speaking the language of union and life, the two L words, life and love. We talked about that before, life and love. Now you bring in something else, a foreign element, and you're setting up a lie. Because when you contracept, it's like you're having the one flesh union, but you're really not. That's what makes it contraceptive. You're taking out a piece of it. You're saying to that person, I'm giving myself to you fully, but not really. I'm holding back my fertility, or vice versa. I'm accepting you fully, except not this part of you. That fertile part of you, that's a problem. Now, the church doesn't say every time a couple embraces the one flesh union, they have to become pregnant. That's another fallacy. Remember, we're unlearning things here as we go back to school. That's a total fallacy. The church is simply saying one thing. What we're saying here, be honest and you'll be happy. You'll be holy and happy. Guaranteed, guaranteed. And I'll tell you one thing, the facts are on the side of the church. We have what in most parts of the world today, certainly in Western civilization, an over 50% divorce rate. You know, divorce rate for people who follow what the church says in this area, it's way, way low, probably about maybe 1, 2, 3% at most. That's a huge difference. That's a lot of proof to me, because they're being honest in their marriage. They're being honest in that precious, very intimate, special union. Remember we said last time in our last program that the woman's womb is the tabernacle of the human race, and the bedroom is the sanctuary. What goes on there determines the rise and fall of humanity, and in fact, it has. Most of our ills today, especially in the area of relationships, family, human sexuality, even vocations, clergy sex abuse scandal, all these things can be traced back to contraception, to what happened in the bedroom. Everything emanates from there because it's the tabernacle of the human race. Let me prove it to you. Actually, I don't have to. It was proven in a prophetic way by Paul VI when he wrote Humanae Vitae. It means of human life. In other words, he wrote to the world in a prophetic way why the world should not embrace the contraceptive worldview. Notice they say worldview, not just contraception, the contraceptive worldview. He made basically 4 predictions in that document. All 4 have come true to the last detail. Let's look at these. Number 1, contraception, he said, would lead to conjugal infidelity and a general lowering of morality. In fact, it has. In fact, there's even now scientific evidence that the birth control pill actually, not only is it harmful for women physically, their health, but actually harms their marriages. In fact, it even causes them to choose bad partners. It has to do with this whole pheromone thing. We don't have time for that right now, maybe another time. But trust me, it's very destructive to women. But here's some of the results. Again, contraception would lead to conjugal infidelity and a general lowering of morality. Remember something. Say, for instance, ladies, if your husband sterilizes himself, he gets a vasectomy or something, or you're on the pill, you sterilize yourself. Remember, you're not sterile just to each other, you're sterile to everybody else in the world. And that has raised the level of infidelity. But here's some more statistics. 4 out of 10 teenagers have had at least one pregnancy in our culture. 75% of all African American children in our culture are born out of wedlock, and 1 out of every 4 is born to a teenage mother. There's practically over 1 million abortions a year. They've gotten better, but still around that mark. And nearly half are teenagers. More than 1 in 7 teens has had at least one abortion, and 80% of those was using contraception. So contraception is a big lie. It does not prevent pregnancy. It contributes to all the sexual maladies that we have today because it's a lie. Real simple. It's a lie. Number 2, the man will lose respect for the woman and no longer care for her physical and psychological equilibrium, and will come to the point of considering her as a mere instrument of selfish enjoyment and no longer as his respected and beloved companion. Aren't those beautiful words, ladies? The church was the singular entity to stand up in defense of you ladies, when it saw that the world was going to put you on the birth control pill. And here's the result. A woman's body's not seen as good as a man's. It's got a problem. It's called fertility. It encourages non-marital sexual union, which hinders the ability to adequately bond with your spouse. As I mentioned, divorce rate is over 50%. Here's prophecy number 3. Contraception will place a dangerous weapon in the hands of public authorities who take no heed of moral exigencies. In other words, they won't have a moral fiber in what they do, but they'll take control of things. Well, you know, sterilization is forced upon third world nations, you know. And as a result, and even with first world nations, the world, Western civilization, is committing demographic suicide. We're not repopulating, and we're literally dying off the face of the earth because we bought the lie about overpopulation. That was prophecy number 3. It came true, didn't it? Look at Europe. Their birth rate isn't high enough to replenish their own population. And America is not far behind. The church knew this. Everybody laughed at the church, thumbed their nose. What do they know? Now we're hurting. See, H zone, hurt. We were dishonest, now we hurt. As a world. And number 4, contraception will lead us to think that we have limitless dominion over our own bodies. Now, as I mentioned, what happened in the womb opened the door for everything today. Test tube babies and virtual fertilization, surrogate motherhood, assisted suicide, euthanasia, human cloning, embryonic stem cell research, same-sex marriage, eugenics, transgenderism, an increase now in capital punishment. All these things come from the world, the order, the world of death, of darkness, of sterility, of non-life. In contrast, let me go through a list of what is good about the church's position. First of all, it would have prevented all of these maladies. And this is pretty dark stuff, which I'm sure you noticed. Here's a list of why it is wiser to follow this more honest approach. It is based on sound scientific knowledge. Sound scientific knowledge. Church is always ahead of science. Science always has to catch up later. Churches know this stuff for centuries. Sound scientific knowledge, it helps couples understand their mutual fertility, enables couples to achieve or avoid a pregnancy. It promotes mutual love of the couple. It's morally acceptable. It does not require regularity of the menstrual cycles, can be successfully applied during breastfeeding, premenopause, and discontinued use of the birth control pill. It is invaluable for infertile couples, both for achieving pregnancy and as a tool in diagnosis and treatment of reproductive disorders. And it is simple to learn. And I'll add a few more. It's good for the woman's health. It's good for the health of the marriage. Do you know that the birth control pill contributes to breast cancer? It's actually a cause of breast cancer. That's right. It has so many detrimental effects on so many levels. The church was right because the church was simply being honest. It was pointing to the order of creation, how God made things, putting on its sacrament glasses and seeing what is really going on in that one flesh union between husband and wife, reading the language of the theology of the body, and then saying, well, that's what's going on. Here's how we can be honest to that. And there are many ways for couples to learn the church's way. It's called natural family planning. Most all dioceses have someone in their department of diocese that can teach the natural way, in other words, God's way. You can go online, go to the websites of the United States Catholic Bishops, the Couple-to-Couple League, things like that. There's plenty of information that can teach and help couples to learn this way, God's way, to be honest. Remember, if we're honest, especially in that area of our lives, we'll be holy, happy, and so will the whole world. And we'll get the big H in the end, heaven.
As someone who's used media a lot in evangelization, so I believe in the importance of Catholic radio, Catholic TV, Catholics using the new media. Can I encourage everyone to watch Shalom TV? I think it's a great vehicle of evangelization. And God bless all of you.
Shalom World, God's own channel.